Hi, I'm Tina White with the Asheville View, and I'm here today with Anna Zuevskaya, the Executive Director of the Asheville-Buncombe County Land Trust. Anna, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm glad you're taking the time to talk to us because, as you know, affordable housing is a big issue in Asheville. And I understand you have a lot of background even before Asheville with affordable housing and land trusts. Tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. So I actually have a master's degree in social work and a master's degree in urban planning. So this kind of intersection between community work and housing and planning has really been a passion of mine for a number of years. After I finished grad school, I moved back to Charlotte, started working at Habitat for Humanity there, and led their neighborhood revitalization efforts. After a few years of doing that, I joined the Neighborhood Coalition in West Charlotte and led the grassroots efforts of that organization, really focused around community development and economic development. And that's really how I got my introduction to community land trusts, working with the residents in West Charlotte. Found out about this tool, the Community Land Trust, and was one of the founding board members for the Community Land Trust in Charlotte, which of course still exists today, and they're well underway in getting their first few homes. Since my work in Charlotte, I have lived in Greenville and worked for an affordable housing provider, Neighborhood Housing Corporation. In Greenville, again, as an executive director, overseeing the affordable housing, overseeing the organization, and really working with community. So I'm just really excited to be in this new role in Asheville. It just kind of feels right at this time. It feels like all of the experience and knowledge that I have gained over the last decade or so really culminated in this work and be able to get the Asheville-Buncombe Community Land Trust up and running.
What is a land trust, and how does it compare to other strategies for affordable housing?
Sure. So one of the main differences between a community land trust and other affordable housing providers is that a community land trust actually retains ownership of the land. And so when we go to sell, let's say, it's a single family home and we own the home, and we go to sell that home to a qualified buyer, at closing, we actually keep ownership of the land. And so the home buyer purchases the structure or the improvement to the land while we keep ownership of the land. And so that's really the biggest difference between us and other affordable housing providers. And what that really allows us to do is lower the purchase price for the homeowner, because essentially, they're only paying for the structure and not the actual land. So with us providing a subsidy, we're able to really lower the purchase price for the homeowner so we can serve more people and also serve households at lower income ranges.
Are there drawbacks to someone who's buying into that? Do they lose control of some things they might take for granted?
Sure. So I always say that community land trust is not for everybody. You do have to weigh the pros and cons, and you have to make sure that it's the right tool, the right model for you personally. So with not owning the land, you also give up some of the potential in equity. So the way that our community land trust is structured is that for every year you live in your home, you acquire 2.25% equity. So that's compounded annually. So if you live in your home for 10 years, then for each one of those 10 years, you would have accumulated 2.25% in equity. So at the end of those 2 years, if you decide to sell, or whatever the situation may be, you walk away with equity. It is likely not going to be as much equity that you would have walked away with had you purchased the land and the house. And so that's part of the drawback, but you also have to consider that if you purchase the land and the house up front, you would have paid a lot more. And so those are kind of the things that you have to weigh. The good part about the shared equity model, the way that we have structured it, is that even if the value of the home goes down over those 5 or 10 years, however long you're in the house, you still get that equity. And so you are protected in a sense against the value dropping, and you're still building equity. And part of the reason why this is so important is that it allows the homeowner to build wealth while owning a home, which, they could potentially stay in the home forever, or they could sell the home 5 to 10 years down the road and have equity, have money to put down on a house that they want to purchase on the market, that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to purchase without building up this equity through the community land trust model.
Are there any other, I'm thinking of these neighborhood associations that sometimes you'll see on the news where they don't let someone paint their house or something. Are there restrictions or requirements, whether it's in terms of maintenance or what you can do with your house?
So you really own the home just like any other homeowner. You can do improvements to your house. We do have some details around if you're looking to capture some of the credit for the improvement. So we have a capital improvement credit policy. So let's say you're adding square footage to your house and you want to make sure that you recapture some of that. You really just apply to us before you do that improvement, and you get approval to, again, capture some of that cost that you put into it. But as far as, what you're able to do with the house, it's your house, you own it. Really the biggest difference is that you don't own the land, and you do lease the land from us as an organization. So you pay a $50 monthly ground lease fee to the Community Land Trust. And you also pay a $50 monthly fee that we put into a maintenance fund. And that's really to help ensure that the homeowner, down the road, if the roof needs to be repaired or replaced or water heater or whatever it may be, you've got that cushion, and there's some funding that is already set aside for those necessary repairs. But again, as far as, having ownership and control of your home, you own it as any other homeowner does.
Great. So tell us about the Asheville-Buncombe Community Land Trust. How big is it? What projects are you planning? When or where?
Well, this is actually a really exciting time for us because this morning we closed on our first home.
Fantastic.
Yes. So we purchased a home in the Shiloh neighborhood, and we're still finalizing all the details. We'll get that information out here by the end of the week, but you're really kind of hearing it the day it happened. So we, again, are just really starting out. We are in our first full year of operation as a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're really just in a growing phase, in a startup phase. I am currently the only employee of the organization. I'm currently part-time. I will be transitioning to part-time in the next few months, and we're also looking to hire another part-time person. So it's just really a lot of exciting momentum happening for us right now. But we do have our first home officially, and we have released our home buyer application for that home. We also have an orientation session scheduled for next month, and that's how people can learn more about the organization and see if they're interested in applying. But we're looking to have all this underway by the end of this year, and we're looking to have 5 to 10 homes here in the next year or two. So we're small, but we're growing pretty fast.
How is the land trust funded? Is it grants or individual donors?
So primarily right now, our capital projects, our ability to acquire homes and properties is funded through the bond referendum from the city of Asheville. So we received $1 million from that bond referendum, which is how we're able to acquire these homes. That's how we were able to acquire this first home. And those funds are to be used within the city limits. So right now, we're focusing on the city, although our service area is the entire county. So that is our primary source of funding, especially for capital projects, like I mentioned. But we also do receive a number of grants for operational expenses and, other projects and programs that we want to start. So in the past year, I think we've gotten 4 or 5 grants from foundations that have really supported us on an operations level.
If someone is in need of affordable housing, 2 questions. What are the most important things they need to know in order to make sure they can qualify for programs like this? And the second question, in general, how would you tell them to go out finding out about or keeping track of opportunities as they arise?
So I think the most important thing, especially for ABCLT, Asheville-Buncombe Community Land Trust, as far as qualifying for a home is knowing what income bracket you fall in. So our biggest qualifier is income. So you have to be under a certain amount based on your household size. So it's based on your income and household size, and that information is available on our website as well as the city website and others. So we serve at this point households below 80% AMI. So let's say your household of 3, you just kind of have to go along that line for a household of 3 and see what the max area median income is, and make sure that your income, your household income, is below that number. And the other thing is just, I think for us, knowing the difference between this model and other affordable housing providers. So there's a lot of affordable housing work going on in Asheville. And I think it's just really important to do your homework on the different organizations and figure out what is the best match for you, and make sure that it feels good for you. Outside of that, there's other things. There's credit, there's debt, but there's definitely support organizations like On Track that can help you kind of figure out what qualifications you need to meet as far as credit and debt and things like that.
For someone who doesn't need affordable housing, why should they care about this initiative? And if they do, what can they do or should they do to support it?
Absolutely. Well, as you know, as I'm sure your viewers know, we're in an affordable housing crisis, and a shortage of housing impacts everybody at all incomes. And so it's just, our city will be more vibrant, our communities will be more vibrant if everybody has housing that they can afford. So I think everybody should care about the issue. I think everybody should advocate for more affordable housing. And for us, if you want to get involved with the Community Land Trust, one of the ways that you can get involved right away is become a member. So we're actually a membership organization. So anybody that's interested in affordable housing in general can go to our website and become a member. You can also sign up for our mailing list to receive information. But that's really the fastest way for you to get involved. And we would love to have you as part of our team.
And a member isn't someone who's necessarily in need of affordable housing. It's someone who considers that an important issue.
Correct.
What role do state, county, I'm always confused by this, but the various levels of government, and then you could throw in foundations, what role does state, county, and cities play in affordable housing, in addressing it?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest things, of course, is funding. And so that can come from all different levels of government. In Asheville, as I mentioned earlier, we're fortunate to have the $1 million bond referendum. We're also fortunate that the city of Asheville set aside $100,000 for operating expenses for us. And so that is just huge for especially a startup organization to have funds to be able to operate and build housing and provide housing and not have to find dollars to keep our doors open is really important. Aside from funding, there's of course legislation and what can and can't happen. And so, for me, I always think most importantly is at the city and county level. So there's of course different levels to it with the state and federal government and other regulations. But I'm always a big proponent of local government being involved and really advocating for affordable housing. And so one of the ways is, of course, city council and county have the authority to approve certain projects. And one of the things that I really like to advocate for is when developers, for-profit developers, propose their project, that city council or county commission really require those developers to set aside a certain number of affordable housing units. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, inclusionary zoning is prohibited in a sense from the state. Now, there are several different cities across North Carolina that have found a way to mandate inclusionary zoning. So that's what I'm talking about when I mean make sure that the for-profit developer sets aside a certain number of affordable housing units. So several cities across the state have found ways to do that. So I just really want to see Asheville kind of take it a step further and look into that more because I think that could really provide, make a huge dent in the crisis.
What are some of the cities that have done that?
So Chapel Hill is one of them. They've done quite a bit of work around that. A lot of their units come from inclusionary zoning. And then Davidson is another one, north of Charlotte. They also are doing some of that work. Last
question. You clearly are familiar with the environment in other cities. You've worked in Charlotte and Greenville. As you start your work here in Asheville, do you see any significant differences in either the quality, the extent, or the shape of the housing issue here? Is it just like other cities, or is there something different about it here?
So that's actually really interesting that you asked that question. I had to spend a little bit of time when I first came to Asheville and started this work my understanding of housing prices and availability of housing, and especially availability of land. So both in my work in Charlotte and Greenville, there's still houses that you can buy at, $100,000, $150,000, and you don't have to put $100,000 into the house just to be able to live in it. There's also still land that you can buy, relatively inexpensively. And Asheville is just very different, at least in my perspective. And so, I think all that says that the crisis is more imminent in Asheville and more pressing in Asheville. And I'm really happy to see that, of course, the Community Land Trust got up and running. But also that there is a lot of momentum happening around affordable housing because, again, compared to other cities in North Carolina and other places that I've worked in, we need to do a lot more work to really catch up.
Anna, I know that Asheville doesn't always welcome outsiders these days because they tend to drive up housing prices, but we certainly welcome you and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.